In a world that's moving this fast, if you're standing still, you're actually falling behind. It's a tough truth. The ability to change, well, it's not just a nice-to-have skill anymore. It's basically a survival instinct. So let's get into what that really means.
It's funny, right? Charles Darwin said this over 150 years ago, and it has never been more true than it is today. Think about it. In nature, in business, in your own life, it's not about being the biggest or the smartest. The winners are the ones who can adapt.
Okay, so that's the big question, isn't it? In this chaotic world, how do you become one of the ones who not only survives, but actually thrives? Well, that's exactly what we're going to break down.
It really boils down to this simple, kind of brutal rule: change or die. That's the unforgiving operating system for today's world. And to really get why this is so urgent, we first have to put a name to this chaos that I think we're all feeling.
Look, you can't win a game if you don't understand the playing field, right? And the field we're all playing on today, well, military strategists and top business leaders have a name for it. They call it a VUCA world.
And VUCA isn't just some fancy business acronym. It's actually a really useful math for making sense of this turbulence. It stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Let's dig into what each of those really means.
All right, first up is V for volatility. This is all about the speed and the turbulence of change. I mean, just think about it. A single tweet can tank the stock market. A new app can pop up and completely upend an entire industry, seemingly overnight. That's volatility in action.
Okay, next we've got U for uncertainty. Because everything's changing so fast, the future is, well, it's just a lot harder to predict. That career path you mapped out for yourself, there's a real chance it might not even exist in 5 years. And that's the tough reality of uncertainty.
C stands for complexity, and this one's a biggie. Our problems just aren't simple anymore, are they? Everything is interconnected. A decision made halfway across the world can create these massive ripple effects everywhere else. I mean, we all just lived through a perfect example of this with the pandemic, right? How it completely tangled up supply chains, economies, our daily lives. That is complexity.
And finally, A is for ambiguity. I love this one. It's like the fog of war, but for the business world. The thing is, we almost never have all the information we need. And the info we do have, it can be interpreted in a dozen different ways. There's no clear single right answer anymore. It's all about making a series of smart, calculated risks.
Okay, so that's the outside world, this big VUCA storm we're all in. But here's the kicker. How you navigate that storm has everything, and I mean everything, to do with what's going on inside your own head. The real battle for change, it's won or lost right between your ears.
See, the results you get in life, they're not random. They're the end of a chain reaction. It all starts with your deepest beliefs. Those beliefs quietly shape your assumptions about how the world works. Then those assumptions guide your day-to-day behaviors, which, you guessed it, trigger your actions. And those actions create your results. So if you want to change the outcome, you can't just tinker with the actions. You have to go all the way back to the beginning, to your core beliefs.
So let me ask you something. Just be honest with yourself for a second. When a new, really disruptive idea comes across your desk, what's your first gut reaction? Is it excitement or is it dread? Because that initial response says a ton about where you are on this whole journey of change.
This right here is called the change adoption curve. It's the classic. Way over on the left, you've got your visionaries and early adopters. These are the folks who jump on new ideas first. Then you get this big bulge in the middle, the early and late majority. That's most people. And then, way over on the right, you have the laggards, the ones who really dig their heels in and resist change. So the big question you have to ask yourself is, where do you fall on this curve? And what about your team or your whole company?
Okay, so we've taken a hard look at the environment, this VUCA world, and we've talked about mindset. Now it's time to get practical. Let's talk about the toolkit. What do we actually do? How do you set goals and get things done when the ground is constantly shifting beneath your feet?
I bet almost everyone watching this was taught how to set SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, achievable, the whole thing. And look, they were great for a world that was predictable. But in this VUCA world, they're just too slow, too rigid. It's really time we upgrade our mental operating system to something built for speed and agility. And that's where fast goals come in.
Just look at the side-by-side here. SMART goals, a lot of the time they're set and forget. You write them down in January and don't look at them again until December. Fast goals, on the other hand, are frequently discussed. You're constantly talking about them, keeping them alive and relevant. SMART goals are meant to be achievable.
Fast goals are ambitious. They're supposed to stretch you, to force you to innovate. Now, S for specific is the same for both. That's still important. But here's the real game changer. T. Smart goals are often kept private. Fast goals are transparent. Everyone knows what they are, which builds incredible alignment and accountability.
But, underneath all the tools and frameworks, there's one thing that is more important than anything else, and it's your fundamental mindset. It really comes down to two options. You're either operating from a fixed mindset, where you believe your talents and abilities are set in stone, or you're coming from a growth mindset, where you believe you can learn, adapt, and develop new skills.
And this is the shift that changes everything. When something goes wrong, the fixed mindset immediately asks, why is this happening to me? It's a victim question. It sees a challenge as a threat. The growth mindset asks a totally different question. What is this trying to teach me? It sees the exact same challenge as an opportunity to learn. Just changing that one question in your head can literally change your entire life. And look, making this shift to a growth mindset, it's not like flipping a switch. It's not a one-and-done decision. It's about building the daily habits and the skills that turn adaptation into something you just do, a continuous, lifelong practice.
Exactly. Growth isn't some destination you arrive at. It's a cycle that never ends. Because the world is never, ever going to stop changing, which means we can't afford to either. The real goal isn't to get to some imaginary finish line. It's to get really, really good at the process of change.
And that whole process really boils down to 3 simple but powerful skills. First, you have to constantly be learning new things. That's the easy one. Second, and this is by far the hardest part for most people, you have to be willing to unlearn old habits and beliefs that just aren't working anymore. And finally, you have to relearn new ways of thinking and operating. Learn, unlearn, relearn. That little loop, that is the engine of all growth.
So, let's put it all together. This all leads to 5 foundational skills for leading in today's world. Number 1, you got to master that cycle of learning, unlearning, and relearning. 2, value where you came from, but live and operate in today. 3, speed is great, but timing is what truly matters. 4, you have to be willing to move forward courageously even when you don't have all the answers. And number 5, and this is a big one, realize that what made you successful yesterday will probably not be enough to meet tomorrow's challenges.
So, we've covered a lot, but it all comes down to this one final question. And I want you to really think about it. What is the one thing you need to change, personally, to be a more effective leader and person? Not something for your company, not for your team, for you. Because at the end of the day, that's where every single meaningful change has to begin.